Welcome back to another episode of It Is What It Is podcast. I'm your host, Cody Kelly. Really want to cover some, I think, interesting topics when it comes to the recent developments past COVID, but really post the George Floyd funeral and the overall just sentiment of the United States, the overall understanding of the systemic oppression and racism that black people feel every day, that this ugly hatred that is just so palpable and thick. What I have found interesting is how the business community has responded, and that's what I want to get into tonight. That's what I want to cover in this podcast, why money flows as blood flows, and to me it's utterly disturbing, but I definitely want to get into you on It Is What It Is podcast. So dealing with the segment of business somehow soaring from the stock market valuations actually going up, really want to focus on why Wall Street is prospering during this turbulent and evil time. Martha White, great writer, goes on to write that the divide between Wall Street and Main Street has grown sharply in the recent weeks amid the coronavirus pandemic and widespread civil unrest. To many, the market's rise appears as both a cause and symptom of the widening gap between the country's haves and the have-nots. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose by more than 400 points, with the S&P 500 now recovering a full 40% from its March lows. Yet millions of workers and small business owners are struggling to cope with the 1-2 punch of an economically devastating pandemic and unrest following the death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police. The stock market represents, one writer put that the stock market represents the fortunes of the fortunate, consolidating their power over the economy. I think it goes into a deeper spin. Unfortunately, chaos creates opportunity for those who don't have a heart. And what I mean by that, it would seem that business would stop. It would not be business as usual. That with civil unrest, with systemic racism and oppression and hatred and evil and the ugliness of these murders from Breonna Taylor to Ahmaud Arbery to George Floyd, there would be some type of at least pause, some type of mourning, some type of reconciliation, some type of time set aside for at least introspection, something. But America, if it does anything well, it puts its priority first, which is never the black community. And in this case, it is the almighty dollar. So this rise really, or profitability amongst your publicly traded institutions is mostly stemming from the fact that the uncertainty has caused an increase in valuation. It's not random occurrence. It's just that this time is being is being abused, and unfortunately, it is being used as a way to increase one's revenue. If you compare it to the stock market that was in March, and now you're seeing the increase. Now, one could argue, obviously, you're coming out of the pandemic. States are starting to reopen. Most states are either in phase 2 through phase 4 of being fully reopened, and there are some states that are fully reopened. But the reality is that with all the current events that is currently taking place, it has acted as a catalyst for this increased revenue growth amongst your larger institutions. So Chris Romeo says that it kind of makes me mad because we built these larger corporations out in 2008. They're only here because of what the government did. And that's absolutely true. So your larger institutions are prospering and profiting off this time because even the bailout money, the loans, the loans that were set aside for corporations, the paycheck protection loan, that was gobbled up by your larger institutions. So literally their revenue, because they had to either decrease in operations, so they've saved money in one aspect, and then they've had this backing of federal money, it has led to an increased rate of speculation, thus increasing their stock market or market capitalization overall. So it's sad. It's disturbing that companies will place profit over people, that business as usual will continue when so many people are hurting. But unfortunately, it just goes to show that this is the American way, and that the dollar will always take precedent over people's lives, which is absolutely disgusting. All right, dealing with corporate America's silence. It has been interesting, especially if you're in the workforce like me, to kind of see the responses that are happening across all organizations. But it is also alarming that there are a lot of organizations that really don't know what to say and really how to go about implementing effective change. Amazon put out a statement that said the brutal treatment of black people in our country must stop. The American Civil Liberties Union replied, "Cool tweet. Will you commit to stop selling face recognition technology that supercharges police abuse?" Claire Atkinson goes on to write that corporate America has been grappling with what to say about the coast-to-coast social justice protests that rock the nation, and whether it might be better to say nothing at all. Corporations large and small share messages of empathy, with some even throwing their support behind the Black Lives Matter movement. Amazon, Apple, Disney, Netflix, Nike, Target, and BlackRock, as well as some smaller companies such as Peloton and Blue Bottle Coffee, delivered messages to their employees and the public over the weekend. Apple's chief executive Tim Cook wrote a poignant memo to employees stating that George Floyd's death is shocking and tragic proof that we must aim for higher than normal future and build one that lives up to the highest ideals for equality and justice. Apple is also donating to causes. Target, which is based in Minneapolis, where Floyd was arrested, temporarily closed a number of stores for reasons of employee safety. The company said in a letter from the Target CEO, Brian Cornell, that we are a community in pain. Amazon shared a post that said that inequitable and brutal treatment of black people in our country must stop. The retail and technology giant was torpedoed on social media. Look, it can go on and on. I think what the point of the article is that politically correct messaging or moment capturing messaging in the name of empathy is beginning, which is better, or not beginning, but which is being seen, which is better than nothing. But one will have to question, is it just the appropriate response because you have to respond because this death has been so alarming, it's been shared on video, it has gone viral, or because this is actually what you mean? And I think there's distinction between that which is said and that which is done, right? So we're getting all of this poetic justice in a sense. But when it comes to actually implementing diversity standards, having a diversity, not just initiative, but actually process attached to your HR personnel, making sure that you are intentional, not just fulfilling quotas, but intentional in hiring all, and I do mean all, that you're intentional in increasing minority leadership, that you're intentional in promotions. Is that really going to take place? Or are you just making sure that your consumer isn't pissed off? And I hope that it is the former, not the latter, right? But my heart says that it's the latter, or I should say my mind says it's the latter, not the former. I think corporations fear protest. They feel work stoppage. They fear abandonment and social outrage. They fear having the microscope turned on them. But actually bringing about effective change, bringing about what's really needed in the force in the workplace, implementing policies that people can feel safe and they're not discriminated against, from applying to interviewing to getting hired to retention to promotion. That's another conversation that corporate America is not prepared, because it does not want to be prepared to have. And I think the messaging that is coming across is, yeah, you're right, this is tragic, this should have never happened, and it is what I call an Instagram moment, but there's no reality behind it. Because when I think of what is the next steps, it's to have these initiatives, to have these standards in place, to ensure the safety and the viability for all in the workplace, and that it is an inclusive work environment, that its inclusivity is absolutely essential to its survival and its success. That you can say, we have black leadership, black executive leadership, minority executive leadership, women executive leadership, just leadership across all boards. And when you can't, and you Google these companies and you look at their executive leadership, it looks like a good old boys club. It looks like the founding of the American Constitution, right? It looks overwhelmingly, and it just, dominated by males, dominated by white males. There's a lack of diversity from top to bottom. And so I'm just wondering, has corporate America really taken a look at itself? Or does it even want to? And I think that's a fair question. Does corporate America really want to look at itself and really become introspective and really focus on change? Or is it about not pissing off the consumer? And I think that has to be placed, because the corporate America is very aware of who buys. Yeah, of course, Amazon doesn't, will say that, and it's not a throw off on Jeff Bezos or anything, but I'm sure they had the analytics from the demographics of who's buying what, when, and how, where. I'm sure Apple is very aware of their consumer. I'm sure Target is very aware of their consumer. I'm sure all of these companies are very aware of who their targeted audience is, and to isolate and annihilate, in a sense, but alienate their target audience would be detrimental to their business. So I feel like their sympathy is a bit inhumane. I want to see, and this is not a throw off, but if you are really focused on the support of the black community, the support of justice, of American justice and liberty for all, and human rights, then initiate something. Show me some type of change. Make a drastic pivot. And I haven't seen that drastic pivot. I appreciate the donations. I appreciate Target definitely in protecting its employees. I also appreciate the donations that some of these companies have made. But if I'm like and Tim Cook, I appreciate the memo. But the next step is, where do we go from here? And since I have not heard nor seen that from anyone, I am a little concerned. So I think that corporate America has agreed that this was wrong, which is a miracle in and of itself, considering that a lot of times they don't. So they have agreed that what has transpired, what has occurred, is absolutely wrong, and that it needs to stop. But to what avail? What movements are you going to make, right? I mean, Netflix shared a post that read, "To be silent is to be complicit. Black Lives Matter. We have a platform. We have a duty to our black members, employees, creators, and talent to speak up." What Netflix did is started to promote the black content. So you see when you first logged in, a bunch of, content by African-American writers, actors, producers, creators. So that's a start, right? So it's like, make your statement, fine. PR, disaster averted, right? You made your statement. Now it's time to actually implement a plan that promotes that your statement is more than just words. It is actionable items. So that should go forward. And I'm just looking for corporate America's evolution, not just its response. Hey, this has been another episode of It Is What It Is podcast. I'm your host, Cody Kelly. Look, always forward to engaging with you, sharing this amazing content. Look, connect with me. Let me know what you want me to cover. Follow me on Instagram, IGCVMK33. Let me know what you think of the podcast. Let me know what topics you want me to cover, and I will definitely feature it. Let me know who else you want on the podcast. Within the best of my abilities, I will try to feature anybody, even if that person is you, because I believe everybody's voice needs to be heard. But until next time, thanks.